How Do I Music? A podcast by Well Nice Music.
So I had to dig a little deeper, and it turns out that Janet owned the rights to it, but she passed away in 21. And she had donated all of her estate to a charity. This is a home that she runs for the homeless. And it's like a soup kitchen in Adelaide, Australia. So these aren't music people. She passed away. Who's running her estate? So I ended up phoning Australia. I had to get up in the middle of the night to get them at a reasonable time from LA.
Hello, it's Monday, your new favourite day of the week. Do you know why? It's because How Do I Music has dropped today, and you have tuned in. So lucky you. You've done it right. You've done the right thing. You've started the week correctly. And to be fair, if you are someone who's tuned in on the Tuesday or any other day for that matter, just ignore everything I said, because that won't make any sense. Good hosting. All jokes aside, thanks for tuning in. We have an amazing guest this week, and we're going to be jumping straight into the world of music supervision with Sean Mulligan. He's a multi-award-winning music supervisor and licensing expert. He's got over 20 years in the industry. He's worked on over 45 films and series for top directors like Aaron Sorkin and Olivia Wilde. Other highlights for Lionsgate and Idris Elba's Green Door Pictures, Nile Rodgers and Elevation Films. You get the idea. This guy has been there, seen it, so this is going to be a really fun chat. So I'm going to move on quickly and get stuck in. But before I do, it's How Do I Music on socials and wellnicemusic.com if you want to see what we do. Thanks for your time as ever, and I hope you enjoy the interview. Name and occupation.
Sean Mulligan, music supervisor.
Last time music moved you, made you cry or dance?
Probably the last time that it was hit deeply was I had put together a meditative playlist, kind of sit down for an hour and just get into, hopefully to achieve a higher sort of plane or, retreat within in a profound way. And through that experience, the second song that I put on that playlist that I borrowed from somebody else's playlist as inspiration was The Lark Ascending, which is this woman, Tasman Little, on violin, who's British, and it was with the BBC Philharmonic, and from a British composer. And something about the performance, the way it was recorded, it was just incredible. And I was just verklempt. It just wrecked me.
All-time favorite album? This one can be tough.
Well, it's not really a fair question, right? Because there's so many, and it's so many different classifications. The most influential album, I think, and it hit me at just that right time as a kid, listening to it, and what was happening at the time. It's probably The Clash, London Calling.
Nice. And explain what you do in 3 words.
Serve and protect. The cops do that too. That's their motto, isn't it?
Yeah. I was gonna say.
That's why it just kind of came to mind. I'm like, wait, I read that on the car door somewhere. Oh, it's cops. It's very true though. It'd be true for a lot of people, but it's definitely true. I heard someone say sort of hey man, how do you get syncs? And I heard someone distill it. I'd love to give them credit. But I also am remembering a couple names, so I don't want to miscredit the person too. So at some point, maybe I can answer this down the road. But someone said how do you get syncs? And the person said fit and timing. I'm like, yeah, that's a lot of things, but it's essentially true. If you're going to boil it down to something simplified, it's going to appeal to a lot of things, but serve and protect is my motto.
Yeah, I like it. Let's bring it back. Can you tell us a bit about your background growing up and describe the moment when you decided to make music a part of your work and an important part of your life? Was it always something you wanted to do, to work with music in a professional capacity? How did that all come about from the start till now?
I've always loved music. I've always had an attachment to some influential people in my life. My grandfather, my whole family's British. They immigrated to Canada back in the 60s. My mom and dad met over there in Canada. I'm in Los Angeles now. I moved down here 20 years ago. And my mom's dad lived with us, and he was my pappy, my sister and I. And he was into music. He was taking organ lessons, and he was like in his like 50s and 60s, I think, around that time. And I was just a tot, had to stand to play. But I loved him so much, and I was interested in stuff that he was interested in. So I started playing this little organ that he had in his room, and fascinated by the sounds that would come out of it and the beatbox and all that kind of stuff. And then my dad had this very extensive and eclectic record collection. So I would just mine through that. And as a kid, like I didn't know the genres of music. I didn't know what to expect. I looked at the pictures and the album art and was like, oh, let's listen to this, see what that looks like. And it was kind of an interesting way of just putting on whatever and seeing if it appealed to me without any biases or any sort of, setup or background or knowledge about it. And so just let the music kind of wash over me and reacted to things, and found that I loved a lot of different type of music, but I was sort of led by the imagery. And I almost went to college for graphic design. And it's sort of a love with image and music. So kind of made sense that at some point I would marry the two in some sort of profession. But an interest in music had me into music lessons. The place that I took lessons at was Yamaha Music School. And they had a store full of pianos and all kinds of wonderful keyboard instruments. And so I liked the electronic stuff because I had more power and ability to play, and you could throw on a beat and play along to it and sound like a whole band and all of that as a kid. So that was very satisfying. My appreciation came from being a fan of music and then someone studying music. And I sold pianos. I actually ended up getting hired at that music store above the music school. And they handed me a calculator and a notepad, and it was like, okay, great, sell pianos. They kind of had me as the keyboard guy because I was younger. I was still in high school, like I just coming out of school, going into college. Fortunately, all in my own hometown. I interned with EMI Music Publishing for a couple months, and then found a job with an independent music publishing company. It was called TMP, the music publisher. And I joined them. And I think after, I don't know if it was 6 months to about a year, they sold to a film television production company called Alliance Atlantis. It was Alliance at the time, which was the film side. They bought Atlantis, and sort of all these companies got bought in together. And we were this music publishing division. And the construct of the company was making film and television. And so we kind of brought those departments together. We had a lot of meetings. Hey, what are you working on? We have music. Now, of course, as a publishing company, like you have your roster. And, it may or may not be relevant for the storytelling, the film, the TV series. And you don't have an answer for everything. But one thing I found was that a lot of creators, storytellers, don't really like to be pushed to work with anybody. They kind of want to decide themselves, or they have their own people and things. So it's kind of interesting, like, there's probably a better way to approach this relationship. Anyway, I soon left that operation. I was coaxed over to the Songwriters Association of Canada, which was a not-for-profit, non-government organization that was advocating for songwriters nationally, involved in negotiating with the government about certain tariffs and things, largely funded by the PRO SOCAN and a number of different government programs. In Canada, they provide a lot of money for the arts, which is incredible. So anyway, that allowed me to kind of run an organization working for a board of songwriters. It sort of demystified some of the process, like from the publishing company, these are real people that write these songs. You can always know that they are, but then you meet people that you've adored and admired for such a long time from afar, and then you meet them. It's kind of getting used to that. It's like, I'm kind of in this world now in an interesting way. Like, how can I be helpful in this world? And you realize that like these songwriters, like they're relying on you. They create the work, and they're like, okay, now you need to go and do something with it, like find a home for it.
I guess you also had the sales training for it as well, so you could transfer those skills over pretty quickly.
A little bit, there's this guy named, Harvey Mackay, and he wrote a book called Beware of the Naked Man Who Offers You His Shirt. And he was like an envelope guy. His company sold envelopes, like nothing sexy about that.
Yeah.
Plenty of companies sell envelopes, but he had the biggest market share.
Right.
And that was one of the tips. I think someone said, read this book, like at that conference in Tampa. And I did. And he just has a bunch of lessons in business about how to appeal to customers, how to stand out from the crowd. He believed in something called the short note. So if somebody did something nice for you, you thank them. It's not an email or a text like, cool, thanks, bro. It's like he would handwrite the note. He would mail it to somebody and they would get it in the post and open it and be like, oh, this guy actually took the time to send me a proper note, which is kind of old timey, but because no one else is doing it, it really stands out. Now I think phone calls really stand out. If you call somebody, they're like, why are you calling me? It must be important. It's like the phone is like dangerous, but how the technology changes. So it's sort of like people, hey, is it okay if I send you music? And it's like, just send me the link. I'm sort of OG and based, it's like,
it is interesting because I've had other experiences where I'm pitching music to radio and I'll be like, let's meet up for a coffee. Let's do this face to face. And people who are my age and below tend to be like, it's okay. Just, let's do it. We can do a Zoom call and send me a link. We don't need to meet up. And it's just quite funny. I think there is a generational gap where people older than me are much more willing to just be like, yeah, let's go for lunch. Yeah. Whereas people my age and below be like, yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, I think it's convergence and divergence at the same time. You could have seen it coming a million miles away. It's like the more connected we are through kind of a convenient means like this, the more disconnected we become at the same time. It's a strange dichotomy, and it influences society and how people are comfortable with certain things and what becomes customary and accepted. And yeah it's really interesting. I try to keep up with everything, stay as relevant as possible. Obviously, I'm not going quietly into that dark night. So as far as lingo and things like that, but yeah, I mean, you could call me up and be like, should we go for a coffee? And if there's something of interest there, like, of course, then I would, but I realize that there is also something missing among, a new generation of not having those kinds of bonds and a little more solid connections. And that's important. Yeah. But it's also understandable because of the saturation of information that's coming at you. Like, everyone's exhausted all the time. Never in the history of time have we had to pay more attention to so many things. So yeah, it's convenient, but at the same time, it doesn't really leave us a lot of time to think. And our brains are being challenged, and like younger kids coming up with technology and like born with like iPads in their hands, their brains are keeping up and moving faster. And so even it informs the storytelling too. Like, movies like aren't lingering on scenes. Movies move more quickly. Stuff happens faster. It's like, yep, I get it. Okay, faster. It's like, yep, I get it. Okay, moving. Yeah.
What you're getting now in TV, in films, is it's an episode will start with something very extreme that happens in the first 2 minutes, because they have to have your attention straight away. Someone's probably going to get hit by a car or murdered straight away, whereas before it would take about 15 to 20 minutes in an episode for that to happen. But they'll do it before the opening credits have even started now, because you don't have any attention span and there's so much competition. Is that something that you've seen change in your work and with your placements, with your supervision? Is that something in your career that you've had to take into account, which is people listening and watching, their habits have changed? And how has that developed with how you consider, formatting a show or putting the music in?
A lot of that, I recognize it. I see what you're seeing. And that's the business part of it. It's like, we need to keep your eyeballs. We want to keep your interest. We want to keep your money. So they got to keep you engaged. It's like, it's a really weird, the business of storytelling, whether it be song or, like, I feel like music, people aren't writing music for an audience. They're not writing music to sell a song in a lot of ways. They're writing music that moves them, something that they want to share and talk about. So there's still, thank God, I think a purity, essential purity to music creation. But then there are plenty of people that are like, I'm starting a library and it needs to be syncable. And like, what are the most synced themes and songs and all that? It's like, okay, like you're casting for that. I get it. That's more of the business side of things. It's great when it happens organically and naturally. I think people, acknowledge that part of it. So at my story level, it's more of a myopic view of when we're looking at the music. It's what does this moment need? We're not involved. It's way above, as a music supervisor, your pay grade to talk about the arc of the storytelling and how it's structured and who's doing what at the beginning. Like the editors will put that together. Obviously, the scriptwriter will, the director will decide because they're the ones that are charged with like, it's your story, tell it your way. So when I say serve and protect, I mean, what does the director want here? And protecting is more of just like, let's make sure nobody gets sued and we've cleared all the rights and everything's above board and, we have what we need. It's fine.
Yeah.
If it's public domain, that we've done our research and all the broadcasters and distributors are, satisfied that like, okay, no one's coming out of the woodwork to say you guys did it wrong. And it costing anybody extra money. But the service side of things is like, well, what does the director want? And what does the scene need? It's rare that we would think of like, well, will the audience like this or not? It's sort of, I feel like if you're pandering to an audience, it's a little bit more of a hackneyed approach. And that's, more of like a production executive's job. Like, are people going to buy this? Like, we're putting all this money down. And I think there should be some of that. I think if you're Disney, I think you should be concerned about your audience, right? Generally, they appeal to a younger audience. They're wanting to impart wisdom, knowledge, lessons for life. I think that when you kill Bambi, you have to decide, like, can the kids handle this or not? Or is this something that they should learn? And like, that just happened. I can get a trigger warning, sorry to kill Bambi. Bambi's mom is who they killed. And as the little kids, watching that, you're just like, but you're like, you process it and it's part of life and you understand. So there's probably a calculated decision being made there, whether this is too much for the audience or not.
Looking back on projects of yours that you've been a part of, is there ones that stand out in your career that were particular favorites of yours? And if so, could you tell us about how that project came about and the process and your role in that?
Yes. Recently, a couple of years back, we started on a project called Fancy Dance. And it was so nice to get the call from the producers because we had done some, it was sort of out of the blue. Like, hey, we like what you guys do. I didn't really ask them, like, what did you see of ours that you liked? So I worked a lot, I collaborated a lot with people. And my partner in crime for the last 10 years, as of October 1st, is this gal, Victoria Beard, Australian who moved to Canada, who I met when I was down in LA, who was looking to intern for the law firm that one of the companies I was involved with was affiliated with, but she was interested in music supervision. So I took her on. And at the time we were doing sync licensing, and supervision kind of came a little bit later after about a year or so. So Vic and I have done tons of projects together. And this one, we got the call, and Confluential Films was producing this. And it was a indigenous story about a mother that had gone missing, and the sister and the mother's daughter together go looking for on the reservation. And there's an epidemic of missing and murdered women in the indigenous community. And so this is sort of a timely project, and it was very obviously important social commentary and a beautiful story. And it was a dark, dramatic indie similar to other ones that I've done, like Blue Bayou for Justin Chon, which was a beautiful film with Alicia Vikander about this Korean kid who was adopted at birth into Louisiana Bayou. So it came up with a Louisiana accent in a white family, but impoverished. And so he works in a tattoo shop, and he's pregnant with Alicia, but it's her second relationship. And there's like a husband who's a cop in the background, the ex-husband. And he's facing getting deported because they never filed his paperwork properly. It's just like, like all this aching challenges that this poor guy's going through this whole story.
Sure.
But it's gorgeous, and it's like, it'll rip your heart out. And it's a beautiful film that we were so proud of, and it was fun to work on as well. But I think maybe based on that, the Fancy Dance people reached out to us.
How much say do you get in the direction of the music in that, or do you have to just follow the director's vision and fully go into that?
There's been a few directors I've worked with that didn't already have a vision for music and some direction. Like oftentimes the music is written into a script.
Sure.
And it's like, well, either can afford that or can't afford that. And that, that's when we get busy. It's like, okay, what's similar to that serves the same purpose and helps tell that story and support it with the same subtext and feeling that you can afford, or there's other maybe particulars. So I think no one's ever said clean slate. What do you think? And there's always like, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. I'd like to get this.
Would you prefer it if you got a clean slate from someone? Is that the dream or a nightmare?
It might be both. I think it would really depend on what the story was. If I love the story and be like, here's what I would do. If it's a story that I maybe, if the director's coming from a different POV, like I respect the story, but like, what are you going for? If it needs to be stylized, so I tend to lean on, I like the director having a sense of music and understanding of music, knowing what they want. It's a little bit more of a path. I'm like, okay, great. At least I know where you want to get to. So, instead of throwing a lot of stuff at the wall, and sometimes with a blank slate, you can try something and then after a while they might not like it. And they keep kind of changing their mind and they're like, well, I know we said this, but let's try this. And then that's a slippery slope because then you can kind of get lost in, I'm not sure if anything's working now. I'm not sure if anything ever will work now. It's like, well, and then you finally land on it and everything's fine.
So how do you source the music? When you're searching for, you've got your brief and there are certain tracks that, they might be too expensive that the team wants. And what happens then? How are you finding your music at that point? Are you going through your inbox with submissions, or do you have playlists already that for certain genres? Talk about that process and how you actually find the music.
Yeah. Well, day to day, we're stockpiling music. People are sending it to us constantly. Here are all the new releases and blasts. And you have to carve out time to listen, parse through it all to stay current, and then park that on lists. So just in the course of receiving incoming music, finding the stuff that makes sense, that's relevant for, in general, themes that come up quite a bit. Here's my folder of background biker bar, tracks. It's like, oh, okay. What does that sound like? It's probably like blues, rock, something, classic like that. But is there a newer version of that came out recently? Okay, let me just put that to the kind of the top of the list. Keeping general playlists, but then also keeping a good archive of past projects. I've done over 50 films, a couple of TV shows by now. And so there's a lot of experience there. I remember that one. This, we were looking for this and I reached out to so-and-so. So you kind of build a catalog of intelligence and wisdom that you can go back and mine after the fact. But for anybody kind of starting out to build that, there's a handful of moments that come up quite a bit. So, some screenwriters created some books about story structure. Paying attention to story structure is important because there's elements like fun and games, Dark Night of the Soul. These are standard in story, 3-act storytelling. And so the fun and games moment, great, this is when everyone just met each other and it's great. And that's before the thing happens that becomes now the challenge that everyone has to overcome. Or in a rom-com, there's always going to be that oh, they just met and now they're just eating ice cream and they're walking on the beach and there's montages and stuff that stuff comes up all the time. Or in a horror movie, there's elements where everyone's at a party and they're raging and they don't realize danger is lurking behind and it's just fun and games, right? There's those kinds of elements. So I would say dig into story. Anyone that's looking to get into music supervision, understand story because, you're going to see it come up quite a bit. So if you can get in front of that and realize, oh, I'm probably going to need music for those types of situations, as you're building, great. So it's incoming music. It's music you've gotten in the past. Sending out briefs, I think, is really helpful. I've been on the licensing side where before Supervision, I was pitching music as sync and licensing rep. Having a diverse catalog is helpful because then you can answer more calls, being prepared, all that kind of stuff. So knowing what it's like being a licensor and receiving briefs from other supervisors for years, I kind of realized what was helpful and what wasn't. And I think I got a brief one time from like a trailer house, and it just basically, it was like on a Friday at like 5:30, which is when they usually come in because everyone changes their mind before the weekend and it needs to get out by like Monday, which means I need to deal with this tonight. But the supervisor at the trailer house is trying to get to like the show tonight at 7 or 8, like drinks first and stuff. So it's like, and I got an email that said, okay, I don't really know what I need. I'm like, sorry, my friend, I can't help you with that. So I'm very mindful as somebody now sending out briefs to be very specific. It's more of a help me help you in the inverse of that. I'm helping myself by being way more helpful for you to be able to find the music in your catalog that, I trust that you're the expert on your catalog. And so if I can tell you exactly what I'm looking for, then you could be the expert and give me that back. And like, here's the 3 songs from our repertoire that you absolutely have to hear that are perfectly relevant and suited for this. And maybe a wild card that you hadn't thought of that might be kind of cool, just hearing the description. So I try to be good with adjectives, descriptions. I try to explain, this is the sound we're looking for. This is the tone it should convey. These are the key words of the lyrics in the subject matter or the overall story we're trying to tell.
What's annoying to you on the other end, and what's useful? Is it just as simple as, please answer my brief? Don't try and shoehorn anything just because it's on your catalog and your boss is breathing down your neck.
Yeah, a lot of people pitch from agendas. And again, I know both sides, so I understand that. Hey, we just signed this artist, their manager, I just got off the phone with them. They're like, where are my syncs? And you're like, I have to pitch it just so I can tell them on the weekly call that I pitched it. Like, I get credit. Like, hey, I sent it.
Yeah.
That's not helpful to us. And it's not appreciated largely because time is so precious in music supervision. Like, we're paid a chunk. We get paid it usually at the beginning and then at the end. So cash flow is an issue unless you've got a bunch of projects that are all strung together in a very nice, neat way, and none of them run over the timelines, which they all do. And, it's chaos. You just can't plan for it. The thing you can try to do is minimize the hours you're putting in to get the job done, because then you're actually paid the most, and then you can do other things at the same time and make a little bit more.
Who else, in your opinion, has a story that deserves to be told, and who should we interview? And they could be completely aspirational. You can set me up on a wild goose chase for somebody that I have no chance of getting on, but it's a fun challenge.
It's also like, what's your favorite album or what's your favorite song? There's so many great people out there doing so many interesting things. It would just be fascinating to interview. Somebody I saw last year at the Muse Expo that I hadn't seen for a while, but got connected with because I had gotten this artist I was working with, Princess Superstar. She had a couple of hits, like top 5 back in the day, in the UK even, with a song called Bad Babysitter. And her song was just synced in Saltburn, in one of the dance scenes, party scene. And so she's kind of had a resurgence, which is kind of cool. So I was working with Princess's stuff, pitching her music, and got her a couple of ads and some decent things. And then she signed this deal with this guy, Richard Goddard, who's founder of, with Seymour Stein, of Sire Records. And Richard had called me up and said, hey, you did some great stuff for Princess. Like, we just did a deal for a new record for her. I'm going to be in LA because, like, my mom's up in the valley and I visit her all the time. Why don't we get together for, like, breakfast? And we started having breakfasts, like, every month for a little while there. So I get to hang out with Richard. And, like, this guy wrote My Boyfriend's Back, songs like I Want Candy, produced Blondie. Like, he was in New York, in a scene, in an era of music, like when the Ramones were playing like CBGBs. Richard comes to mind as somebody that would be really great to, talk about some like old school stories and how things were done back in the day.
We touched on it earlier, and, in LA recently, there's been the writer strikes, and that's affected everyone in terms of pitching, in terms of the amount of syncs going, and obviously it affects you massively. What are the biggest changes that you're seeing in the industry? Obviously, with the rise of AI and AI generated music as well. How much of a concern is it for you, the use of AI within music supervision, within AI generated music? What are your thoughts?
I think technology is fantastic in the as far as like the mechanics of getting the job done and having more tools and resources and points of reference, incredibly helpful. Like doing supervision 20, 30 years ago and having people like send you CDs and and cassettes of music, or having to go to the store to like, I remember when I was interning at EMI a million years ago, the guy running the joint came in. I was working in the boardroom and I was like copying tapes and stuff. And he comes in and he said, all right, I want you to go to the record store and I want you to buy these like 10 albums. And it was just for reference because there was a film that said, here's the kind of music we're looking for, going way back now. So, having access to Spotify or Apple Music or Tidal or all these others where you have all, and YouTube, all music at your fingertips anytime, 24/7 is incredible. We can easily take that for granted because we've had it for a while now. And then websites like Wikipedia, which are crowdsourced info about the history of music, or somebody finding writers, finding who owns the recording, what record. There's like chain of title on record companies. So you go to Discogs and it's like, okay, this came out on this imprint, but it was bought by this company in 1973, and then that company in 89 bought it, and then in 1991 these guys bought it, and it's now owned by Universal. It's like, okay, great. I'm going to go to Universal. Do you guys own this?
What was that process before you could do that? I mean, what the hell happened then?
There were like printed books of like who owned what. I remember like old school supervisors having a bunch of those. I think I remember seeing one at one point, or somebody looking one up before I was involved in all of this years ago. So, and then the AI component of that. So, okay, we're kind of looking for this. Like, let me just see what AI comes up with.
Yeah, sure.
What the algorithm says is similar. And it's kind of clunky in a way, just because some of the similarities might be, I'm looking, it's an Australian artist. And it's like, well, that's not relevant to my search, but, it's going to include that like regionally this music at this era also, other artists were releasing that at the same time. So it's not refined yet, but like the more that becomes more fine-tuned, like I'm looking for songs with this vibe. Geography doesn't matter, era matters, female vocal matters. Like start play with those sliders to then filter out. That's always kind of helpful. But that's great just to get like a brainstorming going. YouTube, same thing, like recommended videos off of a particular song. And I find that Spotify is really good with the radio, although it does tend to whittle some things down to the stuff that you like. So if you like a bunch of things, it's going to keep bringing those songs up over and over and over again. So, there should be a slider for like, am I interested in new music or like the same stuff that I keep listening to? Like
the problem that you get with the algorithm where it's very good at telling you more of the same, and it gets to know your taste, but sometimes you actually do want to be introduced to a new genre that is outside of your current tastes. And I think that's the benefit of having tastemakers and people on the radio, or that human touch that goes plonk, here's a new genre that you weren't currently listening to, and hopefully we can hold on to that human touch a little bit.
Absolutely.
Where do you think the future of supervision is going then? With all your tools at your disposal, maybe it's easier, but could the AI now become the supervisor? Is that something you're worrying about?
I probably should be, only because I think all of us are underestimating the power and ability of what AI can do, right? It's sort of in its infancy at this point. We're seeing some examples, but the tech that's being developed behind the scenes that's like coming is incredible. And the way that technology, sort of the impact of it, but is it Ohm's law? Computer processors, like the price, the power and speed doubles, and for the price like every year. I think the growth of AI is is exponential, right? Because the way it compounds on itself, and then once it's machine learning, teaching itself stuff and exposed to information, it's connecting all its own dots. It's doing that at such a high processing level that it's going to eclipse anything that I think we could expect. also in dangerous ways, so there's that. But there's also sort of, back in the day in the 60s, you saw all kinds of drawings of like flying cars by now, or there was an 80s series called Buck Rogers, and like in the opening credits, like in 1989, NASA launched the last of its deep space probes. Like, so in some sense, we've always, I think, thought we would be further ahead in the past than we are. So I think flying cars are probably still 20, 30 years away. I mean, there's a lot to work out there. But here in Los Angeles, I don't know if you guys have this in the UK, but we have these, what they called Waymo cars that are just driving around the streets, driverless, no one's in them. They got a little spinning thing on top, like it's laser mapping and radar, whatever the sensors are, that's just driving down the street. On Melrose, we have these tiny little cart wagons with like cute little eyes on them that are like rolling down the street, delivering people's food and stuff. And so it's like, you see it starting to happen. You can envision the world of like a lot more of that. It seems absurd now, but like, I think it's the slow, like the boiling frog. Like we're going to be in it before we realize we're in it. So to that point, like, I think, our jobs might disappear one day and we just didn't realize it was happening. But I think in the immediate, I think the technology is fantastic for things like blockchain. It could be most valuable if we could solidify a chain of title with people and have an updated database where, we could eliminate the layer of our job, which is finding out who owns this. Who do we need to talk to like negotiate a deal for a license? If that was just out there somewhere, and like, why isn't it? I can go to Italy tomorrow and take money out of a bank account and get my balance, and worldwide network of banking computers, and like no errors. I've never had any errors ever doing that. Like that system has fortitude. And like, why can't we have that in music for like just who owns what, like for songs and things like that?
It gets unnecessarily murky when you go into different territories with ownership as well. Yeah. I mean, like even the infrastructure with registering PRS over here, which is our royalty system. Yep. I mean, you go onto that website and you register it. It's built in the 90s or 80s. Even. Yeah. It's crazy. And then you're relying on people to update the systems themselves. But I completely agree. You think that by now there would be some sort of universal database that we could all use internationally. But instead, we're still using different territories, these royalty systems that don't talk to each other or don't talk to each other efficiently. Yeah. So it makes your job a lot harder.
And I think that's a product of like decision by committee. I think a lot of these organizations have boards of directors and staff that, well, if we automate it, we're not going to automate ourselves out of a job. So like, let's just not do that. I have this issue with the unions as well, because, the unions came out after like licensing and realized that the labels weren't paying them for reuse fees on licensing, and then hit them with a big bill, and the labels were like, whoa, like, okay, hey, let's come up with a solution here. So they have this threshold for payment. Like if the license is under $7,500, then it's sort of a automated formula for a percentage of the license fee plus health and retirement, stuff like that. So it's like, okay, great. I can plan and budget for that in my agreement. Is this a union song? Yes, great. It's subject to these parameters. And like, I can tell our production teams, this is how much it's going to cost. It's the song license. But I've also gotten like a photocopy of a CD being like, okay, we don't have any forms for this song, but it was on the same record and similar dates that were recorded for the songs on the record. So here's the name of the person just to show you that they played on it, but we don't have any evidence to support that, like, whoa, they did beyond that. So just pay us. And it's like, okay, hang on a second. I have to figure out, like, and you don't want to cause a fuss. So generally, it's like, great, like producers pay it. You don't want to get into a tango with the unions on these kinds of things. And everybody, I should believe, I certainly do, that like we should pay the musicians and writers, based on all of these understandings. So it's just come up with a good system. And recently on a film that we just finished that's coming out early in the new year, there were like 6 vocalists on one song. And originally, they came back from the union and said, yep, they're all singers. I'm like, great. So that's like an extra $7,000 for this song. And then I got a follow-up email like a month later, they're saying like, actually, that was a mistake. We don't have a record for those singers on the song. So it's like, okay, well, I was just costing the production an extra $7,000 that now I get back. And, can we use it somewhere else, or do they appreciate the savings? But, it didn't in this case, thank goodness, but it could have kicked another song out of the project just because of kind of that error. And so we need to fix all the weak links, and technology is an easy way to do it. There's really no excuse not to. So let's get it done.
If you think about the amount of placements that have been lost due to just the bureaucracy and the rules in the way of actually locating a writer, that would be a great opportunity for them, and also some paid money. I've had my boss have to basically chase down a writer who was in a retirement home after being like the third link in the chain of being passed on from person to person to find this person who wrote this song about 30 years ago in a retirement home. And yeah, it's tough. And is there any stories like that? How convoluted are you willing to go to find the writer to clear a track?
Oh, well, it depends on how much the director wants it, right? Serve and protect. So my director on a recent film we did, it's called Dust Bunny, Brian Fuller, had this amazing scene. It's kind of a spoiler. It's a really good film, and everyone should go and see it because it's a lot of fun. There's a moment where we cut to a church, and one of the young lead characters, she's like, I forget how old she's, like 10 or 11, 8 or 10. She's going to get some money from the collection plate. She's going to like steal it from the church because she's desperate. But it's highly stylized. Like the colors are beautiful. The costuming is incredible. It's orchestrated. And they sing and dance to a song, The Lord's Prayer, which was written by this guy, Arnold Strauss out of Australia, for Sister Janet Mead, who was a nun, like this singing folk rock nun back in 72, 73. And she had an international hit with this version of the song and his arrangement of it. And it's cool. It's kind of groovy and funky. And there's like kind of wah-wah distortion guitar on it and like tambo. And it's a great track, and the cast sing to it. And we got the publishing cleared on it, no problem. That was through Peer Music, and it took some digging to get to like Mushroom Music in Australia and all this. And so, it's Peer, and we were clearing it out of Canada because that's where they were posting. So we got that done. So we can use it. We just don't know if like we can use the recorded version of it because it was licensed to A&M Records back in the day, which is now Universal. And Universal's like, yeah, I think that expired. Like we aren't showing any record of it. So I had to dig a little deeper, and it turns out that like Janet owned the rights to it, but she passed away in like 2022, 21. And she had donated all of her estate to a charity. This is a home that she runs, like for the homeless, and it's like a soup kitchen in Adelaide, Australia. So like these aren't music people. She passed away. Like who's running her estate? So I ended up like phoning Australia. Like I had to get up in the middle of the night to get them at a reasonable time from LA, and finding the right person. It was wonderful when I spoke to her, tried to convey like, hi, I'm working on this movie and we have this scene and we think you might have the music, but it's not with the record company. Do you know if it's part of the estate? Is there anyone I can talk to there about it? And we had a couple of back and forths, and her brother, Sister Janet's brother, kind of got involved, and again, doesn't know anything really about music. So I was very careful.
That's going to be such a long education process as well.
Yeah. And you want to be careful because it not only is it just, hey, we'd like to clear this. It's not an innocuous use. Like it's elaborate. And like, this is a sister, a nun. And this kid is, it could be maybe considered a derogatory use because the child's like steals money from the church at the end. Right, so it'd be like, okay, here's the context of like why she's doing that, and in desperate times. And so it's no affront to the church at all. It's kind of separate from that. But just to be able to explain the scene so that they're comfortable with it to say yes, but at the same time, not wanting them to then like see the movie at some point and being like, wait a minute, this isn't what, I was told. It's like, no, you have to be on the nose. And there's a lot of moments like that with like things like drug use and stuff, like how you explain it. But anyway, as far as like finding rights holders, I have a few more of those stories, but that's an interesting one. That's like the most recent, where having to chase somebody down to kind of find them and then, convey that. So yeah, we've called people in prison. I haven't talked to anyone in a nursing home yet.
Yeah, okay. You've been so generous with your time, so I'm really, it's been brilliant. So how's your energy? How are you feeling?
Feeling great, Josh.
I've got a few more questions I want to run through. So for someone who wants to work in music supervision, and it's one of those jobs that's really cool. It's one of those where as a kid, I remember thinking, oh, I would love to be the person who just chooses music from film. Like, what would you say to someone who A, has that opinion that is just doing that, and B, how would you get into that from, what would be your tips for someone aspiring to be in your role?
I would say that it's not just that. It's a lot of things, and understanding of music rights, the various stakeholders. Like that's an important bedrock of information to come into the business with. So I think it's important to take a course, some kind of intro to music supervision to kind of get your chops up. It's funny. It's interesting. There's a lot of other supervisors that are offering courses like that, sort of crash course in supervision and online. So it's more accessible now than ever before. USC has a really great program. I think UCLA has an extension program that a lot of my contemporaries, like as adjunct professors, teach. There's so much information online. There's books you can buy about it that demystify the fundamentals of supervision. So just getting more of an awareness about the overall encompassing involvement and what is required is helpful, of course. And then I think the next most important thing is reaching out and meeting people so that you can get in the door and get experience with someone.
And looking back at your career, is there a lesson that you wish you knew earlier? If you could go back and turn back time and go, here's a tip, do this. Anything come to mind?
I guess don't be intimidated by opinionated people. Everyone has one, opinions and other things. And I think the future is built by visionaries. The future comes from the slime. It crawls out of the muck and you don't see it coming. And so be the slime. I say, chart your course, blaze your trail, try things that, your instincts, it's sort of internal compass. Learn as much as you can about like what people do, but don't sit back on the fact that maybe that's the only way. It's like, maybe there's new ways to do this. Maybe there's something nobody's thought of yet. And you could say that to every comedian about like every joke's ever been told. It's like, and yet, oh, wait, I've never heard that one before. Every song's been written. It's like, and yet, no, it hasn't. It's, repackaged in different ways or remixed in an interesting way. Like try to bring your stamp to things and don't just accept from people what their opinion is as the norm. That's not how we move ahead and forge ahead as like a civilization or a species or as music supervisors,
We've got one final question for you, which is, what song should we play out to and why? It could be one you like. No one's picked one they don't like yet, but
why would they? I think it was Nick Cave that said, strange how potent cheap music is, right? It's like amazing how music can move you. Decent music can sit in the background and play nice and you can kind of half pay attention to it or not. Bad music though, like you got to turn it off. It's like, it's damaging to people. So that's kind of funny. I get why nobody would pick a bad song. I guess, well, because I have such a eclectic, interest in music and love of music and, stemming from my dad's record collection, everything. I love everything from jazz to electronic to, even like punk rock that I mentioned a few times, Ramones, Clash, bands like that. But everything that's new. I think the last song I was listening to is Casey Musgrave's Irish Goodbye. It was the last song on the record, listening to it last night and listened to a ton of music. So I'm always thinking as a fan, I've liked a lot of music, which helps me. As somebody working in music supervision, you can't be narrow-minded about music, right? Because you're kind of working with teams of people to find that stuff. So totally. I guess tied to a moment, maybe there's some depth to this, some overlap. One More Time by Daft Punk. It's simple, it's gleeful, it's sonically unique, it's efficient. And we've all been through a lot in recent years. You mentioned COVID and strikes and things like that. So I think we need to remember pure joy and bliss. And this song does that for me. Partly because I also have I've listened to it for years, but I have a sense memory attached because it played closing night at Coachella of 2019. and it was emanating from one of these art installations. And it was like a launch pad with a rocket ship on top, giant. And like all these like, lab workers behind glass, like the whole weekend working on this stuff. And at the very end of the night of the 3 days at Coachella, all of a sudden music starts emanating from this like sculpture, this art piece. And it was One More Time by Daft Punk. I was thinking the rocket ship was going to take off, which I would have lost it. It didn't. It just smoked a little bit, but like that would have been amazing. I'm like, that thing takes off, but it didn't. But this music came out, everybody in earshot, like as far as you could see, started dancing just like joyfully. Of course, everyone's lit up and crazy, and they just had like the best experience. And it's the end of the night, but like what a moment! As if I didn't already like that song. It's just something that encapsulated it to me. So it also feels like it's a good send-off song. And I hope everybody. Well, that was an incredible moment for me. So I hope everybody listening, if they hear that song, maybe hears that story and maybe dances a little when they do hear it.
Thank you so much, Sean. Thanks for coming on. Thanks so much to Sean for coming on. I really enjoyed that one. Such amazing work that he's done, but such a cool and nice guy with it. That's a pretty good combination if you ask me. Daft Punk at the end too. Who's dancing to that? Me. And hopefully you were too. But thanks so much for everyone for all your support so far. It's How Do I Music on socials and wellnicemusic.com. I'm going to keep it short and sweet, but please do like, rate and review. It really does make a difference. And I've got to say it every time because it does, and you won't do it, but we'll keep trying until we do. Oh, and another reason to do the socials thing is that we do have a mid-season break, so we're going to be posting loads of stuff up on there. So give us a follow. Otherwise, we'll be back very soon for the second part of How Do I Music Series 1, your new favourite podcast. Or top 10 or something, I don't know.
How Do I Music, a podcast by Well Nice Music.